Welcome to Sidetracked, your unofficial agency of record. I'm Shane.
And I'm Emily, and we help run Trek, a tech-driven, full-service creative agency based in Rockford, Illinois.
Here on the podcast, we tackle our clients' biggest marketing challenges. We reveal what's worked for us and dig into real-life case studies and practical strategies you can put to work today.
Curiosity is our compass, which is why we always start with a question.
All right, season 3, Sidetracked, we're back.
Woo!
Feels good, I have to say.
It's been too long.
I know, it has.
The break was too long. I missed this podcast.
I hope I'm not rusty, but I probably will be. So bear with me.
Yeah, you're good.
At the end of the last season, we asked for questions in things that we could talk about in season 3. And one of the resounding questions was a simple one. And that's our big question today. What did you learn in your first full year of podcasting? I love this question because so many clients are thinking they need to start a podcast now and then wanting to use our podcast as the guinea pig. Tell us what you learned, what worked, what didn't. So let's just dive into some of those questions and start with the big one. What did we learn? You go ahead, Shane.
What did we learn? It's like podcasting has become so mainstream that now, like, we're hearing this question from people like, should I have a podcast? Before they're even like, I have a message I want to get out. What channel should I use? It's more like, should I have a podcast? So yes, excited to dive into what we learned. I'll start by saying we have been talking about starting a podcast since 2017. Like, I feel like it came up every year for a while. And I know back in 2017, I was gung-ho, Trek needs a podcast. Let's get in on this channel. I'm a podcast listener
Early
myself, have been for a very long time. And I was excited about it. But quickly what I learned was it takes a lot of work to produce a podcast. And then new people would join the team and say, we should have a podcast. And I feel bad, but I sort of became the naysayer in it. Like, yeah, a podcast would be cool, but think about everything it takes to put a podcast together. It is so much work. And so I won't say like I shut people down. I will say like I sent some people off to go do that discovery themselves and come back and tell me, how many hours a week would this actually take us? And so it didn't happen for a long time because it was a big investment and we weren't sure if the payoff was going to be there. And then things fell into place. The timing was right. Our wonderful podcast producer, Nick Grobe, joined the team again. He had actually been a Trekkie for a long time and then came back. So we knew we had the skills on the team to make it happen and some extra bandwidth to make it happen. And then it was about, okay, who's actually going to be the face of this podcast, which I didn't want to do. I don't know about you.
Yeah. It felt like a natural decision, an extension of like the work that we were already doing, and especially for me in front of clients. But yeah, it was a commitment for sure.
Yes. And you're used to being, on the screen in front of clients. And I'm a more behind the scenes person historically at Trek. But I think the thing that really pushed us towards making the decision to be the hosts of the podcast was when we made the decision to buy the company. And then it made more sense to me. Okay, if we're going to be the co-owners of this business, then it is natural that we could be the co-hosts of the podcast too, and that both of our faces should be out there a little more, although it was only audio at first.
Yeah, and that was a big change in season 2 at the end of last year that we introduced, thinking, oh, this will just add a little bit extra work, but it will be a really, big bang for our buck in terms of effort. Spoiler alert, it was not just a little bit more work. It actually adds a tremendous amount more of work for everybody, I think, involved. But anyways, not to jump in. You originally thought this is going to be a really big undertaking, starting a podcast. Now you have a year under your belt. Is that belief true? Or did this year
Yes.
prove it wrong?
It is a big undertaking, but the question is it worth it? So I want to dig into that today. I'll also say another thing that made us feel a little more confident that we could do it is we started doing podcasts for clients. And when we first had the idea in 2017, we did not have any clients doing podcasts. I think we had our first client do a B2B podcast in, it's like 2022 or 23. And then we got into the rhythm of, okay, every time there's a podcast episode, these are all the things that need to happen behind the scenes. Here's how we book the guests. That podcast had guests, which makes it a little more complicated. And that one was actually only a monthly podcast, that first one. And so we were able to figure out all the behind the scenes processes and get the confidence so we could do it ourselves. And then to answer your question, is it as big an investment as we thought? Most of the work is, I think, on Nick Grobe, who's behind the scenes here. But there is a commitment for us too. Obviously, we have to record every 2 weeks when we're doing a season, and then Nick will, do his magic, turn it into an actual episode, and then we listen to the rough cut and give feedback. And then there's a final cut, which we listen to again. By the time you've listened to the final cut, you're so sick of hearing your own voice in your ears. And then there's the process of actually distributing it, making sure the episode itself gets out there, and then also clips from the episode get out there. And it is a lot of work because by the time you get one episode out, it's like it's time to listen to the rough cut of the next episode. So it's this machine that's always going when we're in the middle of a season. I don't know how many hours Nick puts into editing us. Hopefully it's fewer now than at the beginning because we know more.
It was probably so many in the beginning. We had to do so many takes and pause, start, stop. I feel like we've got a good flow. We know what we're doing a little bit more, but
yeah.
Yeah. So if I can chime in here for a second,
please.
The addition of video to an already audio podcast, I mean, it is more moving parts. I guess it's more things to take into account. We already had fail safes kind of going on for audio, and now we have an additional redundancy just to make sure we're getting the takes, but honestly, like Emily said, we have found a pretty good workflow, I think, and it's still evolving. But if we hold ourselves to, a similar process every time, which can be difficult, because sometimes, conditions just change, even if you're in the same environment you're always in, or this, that, and the other thing. But if we can stick as much as we can to a consistent protocol for how we record, and also how I'm editing, how I'm setting up the files on the back side of things, it doesn't have to be a deal breaker in terms of work or this like overly huge, crazy investment of time. Again, it is a learning curve, but you can get there.
Yeah, that's one of the things we tried to figure out during the first season is how can we like operationalize things a little bit more, and how can we create like consistent segments of the podcast even, so that we only have to record on one day. We don't have to record like 3 separate times. Like our Mics at the Bar segment at the end of each episode, those get recorded all in one day. And they've been a little bit different for each season, but I think that was one way where you can kind of cut some of the time out of it.
For sure. And you're
Mhm.
controlling, you're kind of controlling the circumstances too, you know?
The formula for it, for me, being more of a my husband and I always talk, like, I'm a talker to process sometimes. I don't need to, like, sit and think for long periods of time, like, I just start talking and then I'm processing as I'm talking. And so having our formula, which is like a high level, these are gonna be the segments, this is how it's gonna go, then I can think about what are my thoughts on these segments generally, and then I can just talk. And for me, that's easier and I don't have to prepare as much. So it gives me, because we have such a structure and a process and a formula, I can be more creative and more off the cuff, which is more comfortable for me. I know that's not the case for you, Shane. So like, your preparation looks a little bit different, but the formula gives you I think a bigger starting, an easier place to start with prep for the podcast episodes. You don't have to spend as much time, or exactly what we need to talk about. You just need to think about like what are the main points that you want to hit. I'm putting words in your mouth. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think as much in advance of the episodes. And I think you like to think more, and that throws me off. So that's been for me an interesting learning, is like, how does this structure support the ways that we already work naturally, and then do that together in a happy medium, which I think we found.
Yeah, I think it's a good balance of knowing the topics ahead of time, having a general outline so that I can do the level of prep that I want and you can have the level of organic conversation that you want. Although it always is an organic conversation. We don't talk ahead of time. So who knows what's going to come out. The
Yeah, our poor guests.
bloopers,
Yeah, our poor
like
guests. We just throw 'em in.
the cutting room floor, we have many bloopers. But yeah, it's an organic conversation. We just see what comes out of it. And that does lead to, I think, a little bit more editing on the back end. But
It does, but again, like having that sort of commitment to pre-production and thinking about what you want to say before you go on, um, certainly helps in post.
yeah. One thing that has been really beneficial in moving from just audio to audio and video, obviously, it gives us like a new channel. We were putting the podcast episodes on YouTube when they were just audio, but I don't think anyone's really going to watch that. They weren't getting many views. Um, and so it opens up those, video first channels more for us. But also it makes it easier for us to take clips from the episodes to use for social. And I think for us, the big benefit of having this podcast, and for anyone who's looking into doing a B2B podcast, you're not trying to get 50,000 subscribers, and you're not going after like huge numbers of downloads. You're just trying to get in front of the right people, your target audience, and that target audience might be 100 people. It might be a pretty small market that you're going after. And so you're thinking about, where are those people hanging out and what are they expecting to see on the channels where they're hanging out? And so for us to be able to put the video podcast on YouTube and then take video clips to put on LinkedIn has been huge, because that's where our B2B audience of marketing leaders is hanging out. And those platforms we know are prioritizing video more than, like, you can't really put just an audio clip on LinkedIn. I guess you could, but people don't do it. Like, people are there expecting to see either, somebody's thought leadership, like copy, or a video. And so it's allowed us to be more active on those channels. And the clips that we have posted from the podcast this year, our social media manager, Sean Burke, reports to me that they are the most engaged with content on our social feeds, which doesn't surprise me at all. So we're leaning into that. And I think that was a huge milestone in the podcast. We started small just to see if we could do it. And then when we were ready, we took the leap to video.
Yeah, and I think it's been something that we've learned about how to do it better, and it's gotten better. I think quality, our conversations have gotten better. But the other surprising thing for me, video or not, has been how much I also learn, and like this is almost a good just connection time for like us, and then talking with like the different people at Trek and like reflecting together on what we're seeing happening and what our clients are talking about. And then when it comes up with clients later, or I'm just having conversations like, whoa, we actually talked about that on the podcast. You should listen to this episode. And it kind of was like a good way to facilitate conversations we were having already, not as consistently internally, like maybe just offhand water cooler talk, and making it a more formalized conversation and then being able to share that conversation with clients. I think it's been, from my view, valuable for me too, to be, just talking about the latest things that are happening or what we're actually seeing that works or doesn't work in a lot of cases. I just think the human aspect of it, which we've talked about a lot on this podcast, the way that we're able to connect more with one another and then ultimately with our clients, has been a good outcome of the podcast. And I do think to that end, that's probably why the video does perform better than the sound, the audio only. Is you want to see the people who are talking, or be able to kind of get that peek behind the curtain a little bit more than what you would if it's just audio. So
Yeah.
that was one of my big takeaways for the year, is like this has actually been a really connecting thing, to listeners, to customers, to one another internally. Yeah, I'm a fan of podcasting personally.
One of the things we've learned along the way is how to take one episode and get the absolute most from it. And so the conversation might be, half an hour long, but in there might be 10 or 15 little nuggets that would be helpful to somebody who doesn't necessarily have time to sit down and listen to the full 30-minute conversation. So at the beginning, I think we didn't have a great process for making sure we were pulling those nuggets out and putting them on our channels so that they could find our target audience. And now we've developed a process along the way of when we're producing each episode, actually going in and identifying what are the clips that need to go out on social media. What are the things we want to actually turn into a blog post? That's another thing that the podcast has been great for, is every time we have a guest on the podcast, we're getting their expertise in their own words. And these are often people who don't want to write a blog for the Trek blog necessarily. Like they might be willing to have their byline on the Trek blog, but they're, quote unquote, not a writer. And so in the past, what I would do in that case, if I wanted to get someone's voice out there on our blog and create a thought leadership piece for them, is sit down with them and try to understand their point of view and then try to write something in their voice. But when we have them on the podcast and they can just say their opinions in their voice, it makes it a lot easier to turn that into a thought leadership piece that we can put on our blog, and then obviously clip for social. And so we've been doing that. We've been working learnings from the podcast into our email marketing as well. And basically just making sure that it's a content generation tool for all of our channels.
So we've talked about a lot of things that were good outcomes, things that we've learned. What didn't work? What what were some of the lessons learned that did not end in a success? How did we fail? Let's celebrate that. I think for me, the thing that I won't say we failed, but that originally was the hardest thing to get going was the consistency of it and making sure that we were showing up regardless the season, the work that was happening, the craziness of deciding to buy a business and then going through with it all last year while also having these conversations. And there were definitely some times when I was like, oh, we got to move this. I can't record. And then it came to a point where we just said, we need to show up regardless and make it happen. And whatever, like sometimes you're going to get a version of us that is like, we're showing up, we're doing the best we can. And other times we might have more ideas, we might be more bubbly. But I think just the decision to show up was like, again, not a failure. I think it took some learning, took some deciding and then making it happen regardless on my part.
Yes, we just had to commit. Not to say a podcast recording session will never be rescheduled again, but for the most part, we've really tried not to. And even days like today, like my kid doesn't have school today, so I had to find somewhere for him to go during this recording. Don't worry, he's with a babysitter and they're having a lot of fun. But things like that, like there's just normal life stuff going on outside of this. And I did learn along the way that I prefer to record in the morning, not in the afternoon, because afternoon recording sessions, like it's just not great to schedule a session when you're hitting that like post caffeine slump. So that's been a learning. And it's not always possible, but that's my preference. And you just learn these things by doing them. You have one episode where it's like, wish that conversation went a little bit differently. Or you get finished recording, and you're like, oh, what about this point? What about that point? We should have said this. And so you learn as you go how to plan for those things ahead of time and be as prepared as possible. I think if I could do something differently, I might have gone full video at the start. Like we knew that's where we were going. And looking back, I wish that we had the video version of some of those early conversations. So on the one hand, like I like our launch and learn methodology. This is usually what we do with client projects as well, where something's a little experimental. It's like, well, get something going, get an MVP, put it out there, and test and tweak. And so that's what we were doing. And I'm glad we did it because it got us to start. But if I could go back or if I could give advice to a client who was thinking about doing a podcast, if they knew they were gonna go video eventually, I would say just go video from the start.
Yeah.
So that brings up the question then, like, talking to clients about podcasts, they come to us sometimes and they say, should I do a podcast? Would you recommend a podcast to clients, knowing what you know now with the full year under your belt? And maybe a version of that question is, when would you recommend a podcast and when would you not recommend a podcast?
Okay. It's come up many times. So we've had these conversations in real life. One of my first questions is, who's the host? Like we have had some clients where they want to do a podcast, but there's no good person to host it. And if you're going to have like, a rotating person every time, it's not a podcast. You're just making videos. So, I think there needs to be a host who ideally is willing to show up on video and be authentic, and that's not easy for everybody. Like it wasn't easy for us at the beginning. It gets easier as you go, but you have to have that person who's willing to say yes. And if you don't, that's kind of a deal breaker, I think, at the start. And then we've had conversations with clients about, do you need an external podcast or do you need an internal podcast? This is a totally different conversation if we want to go down that road. But we have clients where they are trying to get information out to, say, their sales team. And so they're thinking, well, why don't we put it on a podcast and like put it out on, Apple Podcasts and Spotify for them to download? Like, no, you're just trying to get to your sales team. There, we can set up like a private podcast for them that's a channel only to them so that you can speak more directly to them. And yeah, what would you say? You've had more of these conversations too.
I think it's for me, it always starts with the question that you kind of were talking to earlier of like, is your audience listening to podcasts? Like, who is your audience? Do you just want to do a podcast because you want to be the face and you want something like you think it would be cool, which that does happen? Or is this something that actually will be a viable channel for you in your marketing strategy? And we had those same conversations back in the day when we were talking about augmented reality. Like everyone just wanted to do AR for the sake of AR. And it was always coming back to the same question is your audience going to use this? Is this an impactful channel to move you towards your goal? Because if you're going to spend money on it and it doesn't move you towards your goal, at least in some way, then it's not worth doing. So I think that's always for me is the first question is like, you go through all this effort, it looks like a success, but are the people who you want to hear it going to listen? And that can be hard to measure. And I think that's another learning is from this year is you can see number of listens. You don't always know who listened to it without making it a part of your full marketing mix with more like when we use HubSpot and we can see clicks on our website, or if they're viewing the blog that corresponds with it, or we also have the podcast on our site so we can see those visits and that kind of thing. We get some of that additional data. But for people who don't have other like marketing tools and they just want to do a podcast, it's also going to be hard to like figure out, are you moving the needle if it's not a part of everything else that you're doing? So long way of saying, is this a channel that is appropriate for your company and for your audience? That's
And just
usually the
because
first
your
question.
audience listens to podcasts doesn't mean they're going to listen to your podcast. So another option is figure out what podcast they do listen to and see, can you be a guest on that podcast? Can you advertise on that podcast? Like there are so many other ways to use podcasts in your marketing mix without creating your own podcast. That said, like I do think if you understand the investment up front and you have a great host and you know who your audience is and you know that they would be likely to listen to a podcast like this with your host on your topic, then it can be a great way to create a lot of content in one afternoon, twice a month.
I do think another thing that has been maybe a blocker mentally for businesses is always like, well, isn't a podcast B2C too? And I think we've busted that myth that it has to be B2C because, again, I've said this multiple times, like we all are consumers ourselves. And so we want to consume information a lot of times in the way that we would with B2C brands, even if we are looking for a B2B solution or that kind of thing, just talking to a human where they are. And so I don't think that it's even, I have heard that from clients. It's like, a podcast, that's a B2C thing. We're a B2B company. And I don't think that that's a viable assessment in
Okay, here's the
in most
question.
cases.
Do you yourself, Emily, listen to any B2B podcasts?
I do, not as many as I do B2C, but that is more, I do listen to B2B because for me, it's a quick learn on the go because I don't have a lot of time. And so I'll listen to audiobooks or I'll listen to like learning things that help me learn. But that's during the work week. On the weekends, or if I'm like want to not think, then I'm listening to more like B2C, silly, fun kinds of things. But that's also part of why we have mind breaks in ours with like mics at the bar and like some of our other things. Like I don't I think you have to find a balance of, even if you're a B2B focused podcast, do you, how do you break it up? Make it still fun to listen to and not so heavy. Like, I don't want it to be a burden to listen to the podcast, trying to figure out what you're saying and understanding. Like, it needs to be digestible.
Yeah. I will listen to B2B podcasts if they're going to help me solve a work problem that I have.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah. And so, like, I recently started listening to the Agency Profitability podcast from Parakeeto because I'm trying to learn some of their operational metrics that they recommend for agency owners. And like, this is made for me. Great. And I need it right now. And it's actually really helpful. And I listened to a podcast called Fixable with Anne Morris and Frances Fry that I love. That's like an HR leaders podcast. I listen to plenty of them that are more work oriented, and I listen to them at different times of the day. Like you, like I wouldn't listen to one on a weekend. Necessarily, but there are definitely, like, if somebody's preferred way of consuming information is via podcasts, then that's probably going to cross over into their work life if they are the type of person that has work goals that they're trying to achieve. So with us, with our target audience being marketing leaders like CMOs, directors of marketing, like they are trying to get something done. They're coming up against challenges in their work life that we could help with. And so I think we have the perfect target audience for this. And then that just goes back to your question, who's your audience? And do you have something to say that matches what they're looking for?
2025 podcasting in the books. Was it a success? Yes or no?
Yes. Yes, I think so, definitely. We've learned a lot along the way. 2026, I feel like, will be a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
I'm speaking that into existence right now.
Put it on our vision board. We're starting a
Yes.
vision board for 2026.
Yes.
We're going to put some fancy new microphone holders. We're going to put some
Yeah.
little puff balls on our microphones. Whatever. We're going to take podcasting to the next level, 2026.
Problem solved. So here for Problem Solved, we have our social media strategist, Sean Burke. Hi, Sean.
Hey, how's it going?
It's great. Welcome. And we're going to be talking about ourselves. Normally in Problem Solved, we talk about a client project that we worked on, but we're talking about Sidetracked, the Trek podcast. And when we first started podcasting, we were putting out the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. But we wanted to get it out there more. We wanted to really use it. So, Sean, tell us, how do we do that?
Sure. I mean, my specialty is obviously in social media, and getting a podcast out that's the first place that I thought of and the first place that we went. Namely, Instagram Shorts or Reels, YouTube Shorts, and on Facebook as, what is now also Reels. What this entails is kind of what you guys talked about a little bit earlier of identifying small nuggets in each podcast, normally on the order of like maybe 5 to 10 per episode, and getting timestamps of those, editing them down. Obviously, we're in a 16:9 horizontal format right now, so also converting it to a vertical format. And then making sure that it's like under a minute, digestible for social, a like whole contained thought, and then putting it out there. HubSpot makes this really, really easy because that is where we do all of our social publishing, all of our production there. And being able to upload the video into one place and have it instantly be, accessible to all of the social platforms I need is awesome. There are certain peculiarities that happen where, on Instagram, I've recently started including, you and Emily, and if we have a guest on the podcast, them as collaborators, which allows that post to then also be shared to their feed after they accept. That goes a long way in, increasing reach, exposing the podcast to more people. Also, because it's your audience, it is, inherently a little bit more targeted, which is great. And on YouTube and things like that, it's shorts are kind of this wild west still, where some shorts will go off and get 1,000 views, and then some will not and kind of stick around maybe the 100 range. But you're trying to treat each platform as its own beast a little bit, and you're trying to wrangle it. But yeah, no, it's that's kind of the long and short of the distribution part of it. It's making sure that you have a good volume and that you kind of space everything out evenly. You create copy for each of the different pieces that go out, and you try to treat each one as, or at least I try to treat each one as like, how do I help in, or what piece of this podcast is most helpful and to what end, and kind of positioning it that way. It's kind of how we think about, the podcast more holistically, is like, how can people then use this? It is entertainment, but it is also like a practical tool. So
to me, social is like the best place to get in front of like our right audience the quickest, because like they're already there. We're already interacting with them there. The audience is already built there, and it's a surefire way to get the right people listening to, just some clips to start.
Yeah, people
and
who
it's easier. Like social media is just a good place to start for kind of getting your podcast out there.
Yeah, I mean, and it become much more of a like common format where on TikTok, and especially I think popularized this, and Reels followed suit, that these longer form podcasts, because it feels like everyone has a podcast now. It feels like on like the millennial and Gen Z side, like you kind of you go to college, you start your podcast, and then you do whatever else after that. But it feels like the podcast format, like the interview, especially like interview and chatting and stuff like that, that has become just like a common format on the internet for vertical video specifically. And so I think people, it's familiar to them. And so it doesn't feel like business content, even if it is. It's also like, comes with a face and a smile and a personality, and is like a little bit more soulful than any templated content might be otherwise.
So we need to get big comfy couches to sit on in loungewear, and like
Trek
hold our
beanbag.
microphones like this. And yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I will chill
Maybe
on a
next
beanbag.
season.
Yep. Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, actually, I mean, that makes me think of another piece of advice that I would give clients, which is don't try to imitate what all of the podcasts out there are doing if that's not your style. Like, figure out what is your style. Like, our style is sitting here at our desks on Zoom, just talking to each other like normal people, because that's already what we're doing all day. We don't need the big couch and the fancy microphone. Although, yeah, maybe we will get the little puff balls.
Puff balls coming soon.
Trek
Immediately
has the
after this, I'm
benefit-
ordering it.
We're going to go right to Amazon. Trek has the benefit of, a long-standing history and 30 years of defining a voice and defining customer base, and, and also just like a very, if I should say so myself, a very personality filled cast of characters that we all work with. So, there's inherently a style and a voice that I don't think we would have gone out and imitated anything. But if it is good to be mindful of, when you're starting out, just do what feels good and right. Like, we started with audio because it was a minimum viable product. It was the easiest thing to get out the door. We feel much more comfortable on video. It feels more personal. It feels like it's a better production quality, and makes more connection, and also shows off, who we are a little bit better. So, do what feels comfortable. comfortable and then refine and grow from there. Don't try to like imitate. Like that's the quickest way to feel insincere on the internet is to try to just imitate what's doing really well.
Yes. That's good advice for social in general.
Yeah.
Problem solved.
Problem solved. Thanks, Sean.
Absolutely. Anytime.
For this season of Mike's at the Bar, I'm asking fellow Trekkies to join me for 3 questions and one of their favorite drinks. Little do they know, I'm asking them a wild card question as well. Today, I have Sean Burke with me, social media strategist. All right, Sean, what's changed most about social strategy in the last year? And what do you think brands will need to do differently in 2026?
Sure. So to me, the things that have changed most in the social landscape are kind of the things that have changed all over the world. AI is a thing now. Artificial intelligence is just becoming part of everyone's lives. And what that means for social is that content now has to beat this immediate assumption that it is fake, that it is from AI. It needs to be human and sound human. Ways that some people are doing this, HubSpot is actually lowercasing a lot of their texts, just being grammatically incorrect on purpose in order to feel more authentic, like a person wrote it because a person did. And it's really interesting that we're in this world now where I think there had been a trend for a while where like highly produced content was getting sort of a bad rap. I don't think people should move away from it, but you definitely need to be cognizant of that as an optic, as how content is viewed. So that's probably the biggest trend change in the last year or so.
Trying to make things feel more human, more genuine.
Absolutely, yeah, especially in the face of all this AI stuff.
Next question. What is the most underrated trend or tool in social media right now that more brands should be paying attention to?
Sure. The most underrated trend right now, or like a tool, I'm going with a little bit of a cop out here. This kind of ties in with the AI stuff. Cell phone cameras are so good. There's not a bad cell phone camera on the market anymore. It used to be that, you know, anything you filmed on a phone or any photos you took would be grainy or have lighting issues or just not really be usable in a professional context. Nowadays, you can kind of get away with a lot with a phone. And I think that more, especially like medium to small businesses, can really get pretty far with just what they have in their pocket. That's not to say that you shouldn't invest in good camera equipment and lighting or good photography and videography. There's a time and a place for both. And for like day-to-day socials of a lot of places, a phone is going to get you pretty far. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what, they just shoot 28 years later, all on iPhones, obviously with a lot more add-ons. But yeah, to your point, what everybody has in their pocket is going to allow them to create good content.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Ready?
Absolutely.
If you could swap lives for 1 week with a social media manager from any brand, who would it be and what would you want to learn?
Sure. I'm going to cheat a little bit for this one too. He's no longer the social media manager for this brand, but he's a very fantastic LinkedIn influencer, used to work in social media, now has a promising like basketball career wildly. His name is Jack Appleby, and he does amateur basketball, but he also is this kind of tour de force on LinkedIn in the social media space. He's always commenting on a lot of the latest stuff, and a lot of what he talks about always comes back to the core tenets of make good content and treat the content well, and it will spread. He used to be the social media manager at Twitch Interactive, twitch.tv. And I would love to have swapped places with him when he was at Twitch, because it's such a fast moving platform. And it's almost this like in between of like a cable news network and a online media company. Like, cause for people that don't know, Twitch is an online gaming streaming service People are streaming to, thousands, millions of people at a time. Ninja was one of the more prominent streamers in the last like 5-6 years. Got really big playing Fortnite, had Drake come on and play on one of his streams. So like, it's not a small thing, but it's also not this like it's not ABC. And so I'm really interested to see how you stay in touch with everything that's happening on this platform, from these large streamers to small streamers, and how you compact that into a social media message. Yeah, he had a really interesting job.
So what would you have wanted to learn from him if you swapped places with him? What would be the question you would ask him?
Gosh, I would probably be asking him, how do you keep up with everything that's happening on this platform all of the time?
There's only 24 hours in the day.
There's only 24 hours in the day. There's hundreds of categories. There's always new games coming out. There's always new streamers floating to the top. Like when COVID came around, the chess scene, this game that's been around for millennia, shot to the top of Twitch because of Queen's Gambit. And suddenly now you have these like, there's chess boxing streams where they go back and forth playing a game of chess and then a boxing match, and it's called Creator Clash, I think, and it's really crazy. So like keeping on top of like all the latest trends, like how do you effectively trend spot in such a fast moving marketplace
and know what to like grab a hold of and ride that?
Yeah, like, is it data driven? Is it intuition? Like, what is it a mix of? It's probably both, but I would love to sit down and talk to him about that.
Okay, Sean, I got a wild card for you. I'm ready for this. You ready for this one? What we're going to do is I have a wild card question for you. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and grab a question out of Grandpa's can, hand it to me, and I'll read it to you. So you have no prep.
So I should not look. Okay. I can feel the text on this one. It feels good.
You are allowed one fictional product from pop culture to become real. What are you bringing into the world?
Oh man. I mean, so, okay. Immediately my mind goes to like things like the Master Sword from Zelda, which would be just like a really cool artifact to have. But for the good of humanity, I do think I have to bring the Star Trek replicator into existence. just have something that can make anything. I need coffee. I need a car. I need anything. Just replicator makes it. Replicator just produces whatever you want, and they would just solve so many problems. I would be remiss not to bring it into existence.
That's awesome. That's a good one. Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Cheers.
Thanks for joining us. If you like this episode of Sidetracked, rate and review it and share it with a friend.
Sidetracked is a production of Trek. Our production team includes Nick Grobe, Sean Burke, Nick Ostick, and Mike Wilson. Learn more about us at trek.com.
See you next time.
See ya. Emily, one more thing. I think if we're going to own a business in 2026, we should each get a pair of power pants.
Tell me more.
Like sequins, velvet, power pants.
I'm in. Let's do it. Power pants. And we have to wear them for every episode that we record.
Yeah, obviously.
Obviously. Cool.
See ya.
Bye.